Hi, my name is Dr. Felicia, and I'm a licensed psychologist. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about why apologies are something that you really shouldn't focus on as a spiritual abuse survivor or any other survivor of any other type of abuse, specifically psychological abuse, right? So when you've been through these types of abuses before, a lot of times you are going to be looking for that apology. And when I've worked with clients, I hear this a lot, like, why won't they just say they're sorry? Why won't they just apologize? And so for some of you, that apology is really important. And then for some of you, some of the other clients that I've worked with, they get frustrated because they hear these apologies all the time, but they mean less. Okay. So basically, if you're a survivor of abuse, you're going to kind of probably fall into one of two categories. One category, the person who inflicted the abusive behavior never apologizes, right? And you're like waiting for that apology. And then on the other hand, you may be somebody who has heard the apology multiple times and there's no change, and you kind of become, I guess, just sort of like jaded. You feel hopeless and you just feel like apologies don't mean anything. And so I want to go through in this video why apologies actually mean less than you think. For some people, if you're waiting for that apology from somebody, an apology is pretty easy to give, actually. It's just a verbal thing, someone saying that they're sorry. And as you know, being a survivor of abuse, that a lot of times when people who are abusive say things, they don't mean what they say, right? Or their actions, what they say. Let me phrase that differently. It's not necessarily that they don't mean what they say, but their words, especially promises or just positive things, are rarely backed up by any sort of action, right? And so people have said before, that the abusive person told them that they loved them. If it was a spiritually abusive environment, they would say things like, I don't know, this congregation or these followers of mine mean so much to me, and all these other things, basically saying things that their actions don't back up. And so it's important to keep apologies in their proper perspective. For some of you, you may be in a situation where, again, you're hearing these apologies and they're not really backed up by anything tangible, right? They say sorry 50 times and do the same thing 50 times. And so what I want you to focus on, and a question I've gotten a lot, is how do you know that an apology is genuine? No one's perfect. We all have made mistakes. And I wouldn't even say just made mistakes. We've done things to hurt other people. And so if you look at what a genuine apology looks like, maybe take a second to think about somebody who has apologized to you, and you believe their apology, right? And things got better after that apology, or maybe you apologized to someone. What were some of those things that were in common? And I'm going to list 3 things that I want you to take into account to help you decide whether an apology is genuine, right? The first thing is that whoever is apologizing is going to express some sort of remorse or regret. And hint, all of these begin with the letter R. So the first one, they're going to express some kind of remorse or regret. It's one thing to say, oh, I'm sorry, but it's another thing to show regret over their actions. And you have to be careful, because sometimes people will even use the regret or remorse to turn themselves into the victim, right? And so they may say, oh, I feel so bad, I'm such a horrible person, kind of go into all these exaggerated extremes to now make you feel sorry for them. And so you might be like, oh, it's not that bad or whatnot. You want to be really, really careful about that. When I talk about regret and remorse, they're expressing that in terms of how you were wronged, right? So they may say something like, I can imagine what I said was super hurtful. It makes me sad to think that I said such careless words that really hurt you so deeply. And that's, and really the remorse and regret are going to be focused on how you were affected. That's the first thing. The second thing is that they're going to take responsibility. For a lot of people, they will say that they're sorry and they may even show some regret, but then they will blame other factors. And they'll say, well, I was tired. I've been going through a really stressful season. And even sometimes explanations can feel like excuses. So the first thing they're going to do is take responsibility, right? And say, what I did was wrong. It was hurtful, and take ownership of that. And there may be other confounding factors too. Maybe the person may have said something and didn't realize how offensive it was or whatever. But the point is, they're not banking on explanations and using them as excuses. And the explanations will also come secondary to the responsibility. So they're going to own up to what they did. And if they're explaining the circumstances around it, it's not as a way of making an excuse, right? And that's also very subtle too, because many people will say, I'm not excusing this, and then take that explanation and it will sound exactly like what it is, an excuse. So the first one, like I said, remorse. Second, responsibility. The third one is that they're going to make some sort of restitution when necessary, right? And so it's one thing to say, oh, I'm sorry, and even take responsibility, but there has to be, when there's been a loss or when there's been some sort of injury done, there always has to be either a like some kind of restitution or some sort of restoration. The difference between both really are subtle. They both begin with R, so you can think about it that way. Either like restore something that was lost or make some sort of restitution when that's not possible, right? And so if you think about it, that's what the justice system, attempts to do, is that they're saying basically this thing, there was a wrong, and so there needs to be some sort of restitution, whatever that looks like. And that's really important because, if that restitution or restoration isn't there, it minimizes the impact of what happened, basically minimizes the impact of the injury that was caused. And so, when you think about, a lot of times people are just really, really focused on getting an apology. And I completely understand why. You want closure, you want some sort of acknowledgement that something's been done. But I also want you to understand and not be too, too pacified by an apology, right? You don't want to just hear an apology and be like, oh, well, it's all good because they apologized. It's going to take time for you to really see if that apology was genuine. And so I want you to really take that to heart, because it can be really difficult when you've been on the receiving end of manipulative, hurtful, and abusive behaviors and rhetoric, to either be of one of two extremes, either really craving that apology and then being so happy that you got it that you don't pay attention to warning signs, or on the other hand, just being jaded when you hear apologies that seem and are meaningless. And so I'm going to go over those R's again. The first one is remorse or regret, and that is about how the injured party was affected, not, oh, I feel like I'm such a bad person, to try and make themselves a victim. Second one is responsibility, right? Explanations may be there, but the primary thing is that they are taking responsibility for what was done. The third and final one is restitution or restoration, right? And so think about what those things mean. It may be some sort of compensation, or, and the compensation can look different ways, or it could be just restoring what was lost. The point is there's some sort of action behind that apology. And anytime you're in a situation where you're not sure whether an apology is meaningful, look for those actions, and it has to be consistent over time. I talk about this in some of my earlier videos on spiritual abuse. It applies to any sort of abuse or relationship, is that trust is not only earned, but it is maintained. So in other words, somebody could have earned your trust, but they could have also lost your trust because of what they did, right? And we can also lose the trust of others. And so we have to understand how precious trust is. And we also have to remember that with apologies, it's the same thing. Somebody who is genuinely apologetic for what they've done will show those things, and also they will demonstrate a trend in positive behaviors and change behaviors over time. So I hope that's helpful. I would love to hear from you all in the comment section too. What sorts of things do you look for to determine whether an apology is genuine? Do you identify with the one group that's really looking for that apology and has not gotten it yet? Or are you in the second group where you've heard apologies and they just don't mean anything to you anymore because of the lack of change behavior? Or are you somewhere in between? You know, I'd love to hear from all of you in the comment section. I love how the community is becoming so supportive of one another. And so I'd love to hear from you in the comments, as well as other things that you feel indicate a genuine apology. To book a consultation with me, go to my website, skillsetcounseling.com, or click on the link in the description box. I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.